Today we're going to create prefabs. Prefabs, what is a prefab? You will be thinking. So a prefab is something you can create in your game to optimize it. Let's put an example. I'm sure you are playing a game where, for example, the player is running and needs to avoid obstacles or need to catch some coins or fight with enemies. So those coins are always the same. Those enemies, usually you have a few of them, but they are the same that are generated during the scene in different moments and positions. So at the end, the prefab is that it's a predefined element that we're going to reuse during our game multiple times. We're going to instantiate it, or let's say clone it in different moments and positions, and we can even play with its properties so that is visually the same, but later will be different some parameters as, for example, the attack, the speed, etc. So let's see how we can create prefabs in our game to reuse them and simply optimize our games. Let's see.
We're in Unity now, so let's create a prefab, as we said at the beginning of the video. We will create two different prefabs, and later on in the script we will instantiate them, so you see how easily is this. On the one side, we already have in the scene this coin. Is an object where we have included a collider, a rigid body, and is completely frozen in this position. Okay, will not rotate, will not move, anything. One of the prefabs will be with this coin, so that we can replicate and create it as many times as we want. On the other side, I'm going to just drag and drop the asteroid. I'm going to decrease a bit the size of this element, like this. We will include rigid body, not affected by the gravity, and we will include a collider, in this case also a polygon collider, so that detects all the vertices and everything that this object, that this complex has, as this. Perfect. So those are the two elements that we will create as prefabs. What I will do is just go here to the main folder in assets. I'm going to create a new folder to organize everything. I will call this prefabs. Once you open this folder, the only thing you need to do to create a prefab is, once your object is configured in the scene, for example the asteroid, you will drag and drop this object to this folder. You see that now this has changed, now this box is blue, and we see in here the asteroid. So if we remove from the scene the asteroid, the reference to this game object with exactly the same properties is still here, and we can replicate it and create it in our scene as many times as we want. In the scene view, we can still see the asteroid, and we can see it contains all the properties, zero gravity in the rigid body, the polygon collider. So exactly the same object that we created, and now we can create it as many times as we want in the scene. We will do the same with the coin. We are going to drag and drop the coin in here and remove it from the scene. Right now you can see that in the scene we only have the camera, the script, and the spaceship. So none of these elements, coin or asteroid, is in the scene. We are going to create them, instantiate them directly from the script. So for that, let's modify the script, game controller, that is managing this scene. We are going to create a new method called generate prefabs, and this method will be the one instantiating these objects in the scene. When you instantiate a prefab, you can create it and modify all the properties you want, as the position, the velocity. You can even change other properties. So it's very interesting because we can replicate but also adapt each of them when we create them. In this generate method, what we are going to do is basically instantiate. We are going to instantiate 2 coins and 1 asteroid, for example. So let's start by defining the variables. As always, at the beginning, we need on the one side a public game object for the coin, and on the other side we need a public game object for the asteroid. Here we will reference later the prefabs, so we know what this script needs to create. And here comes the magic. So basically what we will do is game object, let's call it A. We're going to create a new object that will be an instance of our prefab, in this case the coin, okay, the game object coin, as a game object. So this will create the object, and later on we can modify the properties of this A game object so that we can modify some values. For example, let's change the position. Let's create this object in a specific position that is interesting for our game. For that, new vector 3 is a game 2D, so we don't mind about the set value. Let's create it in -5 in the x-axis, 2 in the y-axis, and in z we don't mind, so 0. This will create a coin in this position. Let's just copy paste to create another one. We said we're going to create 2 coins. Let's just modify the name of the game object, B in this case, and for example create it in 3f minus 3f. Okay, so with this we're creating 2 coins. Let's finish the example by creating, this case will be called C. Instead of a coin, we're going to create the other game object, the asteroid. And we're going to create it right in the middle, 0, 0, 0, for example. Great, so once we have that, we have a method that we'll call on the start of the game, and we'll instantiate and create these 3 objects in this scene. So you will see that once we have a prefab, we can create it as many times as we want. And also, after creating it, we can play with it, with each of them, in a different way. So let's open the prefabs. Let's assign the reference, so Unity knows what object needs to create coin and asteroid directly from the prefabs folder. Let's save and test it. We will click play, and we will see that the objects are created in the position we were expecting. A coin in the -5, 2, -5, 2. The other one should be in the 3, -3. Let's check. 3 minus 3. And the other one was in 0, 0, 0. So perfect. The position is correct. We can now play with our player. These objects are not moving. These objects, yes. And that's it. So we see that we could implement easily. Bye-bye asteroid. The asteroid is going, I don't know where. So we could instantiate the prefabs. We saw that we can modify some of their properties after creating them. And that's how you can create prefabs and instantiate them in your game. So if you liked this asteroid that is going nowhere, click like to this video. And thanks a lot for watching. Hope this video is useful. Else, as always, just put me a comment. I will be there to help. And see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.